because I experienced it. And when I see these stories and I read these stories and I watch these films and I have these conversations, I get very emotional because it brings me back to my own experiences.
Okay, here's my intro. Let me just erase that right there and go simple. My name, no, I don't like that. Aziza Kibibi.
Hey, Aziza Kibibi here, and welcome back to my channel. Shout out to all of my subscribers, and if you have not already subscribed and you like conversations, real, candid conversations and advice about relationships, surviving, and analyzing the human experience, because I always say we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and there's a lot that could go on in this human experience. So, as a survivor of abuse at the hands of my father, many years of abuse, child molestation, domestic violence. I didn't escape him until I was 24 years old. I was homeschooled until the age of 11, so I didn't have an education. I wasn't socialized. I wasn't allowed to talk to family members. And I'm African American. Yes, when we look back at my family tree and my genealogy, there are some other ethnicities and races mixed in, but I'm Black, and for the most part I'm African American. And on my mom's side, Jamaican. My grandmother is Jamaican, my mom is from London, but on my dad's side, American. Being that I have experienced trauma at the hands of a Black man, I have been asked, does that affect my perspective and how I see Black men and how I see men in general? So yes, it has. And you know what? I say that very cautiously because we tend to associate negative experiences in our lives with whatever it is that caused that experience. So if for my psychologists out there and my sociologists out there, if you know about even Pavlov and conditioned responses and unconditioned responses, do some research on that. Basically, if you take, just to give you a rundown, if you take something that normally isn't considered harmful and then someone is traumatized by that thing, let's say like a car crash. Normally we feel safe enough in a car, we're driving in the car, we go to red lights, everybody stops. But then if you have someone run a red light when you have the green and crash into you, then you have a response. You have been traumatized, and it could take some time, and I have experienced this myself. It could take some time to then trust the red lights and the green lights and trust the traffic flow, because you had put trust in the order of things dealing with traffic and dealing with driving, but then someone violated that trust, and now you have PTSD associated with driving and the traffic system. So that's essentially how it works. So yeah, my perspective has been affected, but interestingly enough, and I think it's because of my education and my schooling and my awareness of cultural practices and historical practices of different cultures throughout history, it didn't really affect my perspective of Black men in the way that I think that only Black men are abusive, or I am not interested in Black men. It affected my perspective of men in general and people, because we have to consider the fact that my father also molested me with a woman, and she was willing and excited to molest a 10-year-old girl. So my perspective of women then was changed, and essentially it's my perspective of humans and being aware of the evil that humans can do. I love Black men. I do. I think they are beautiful, talented, intelligent. There's just something, and I appreciate men of all races and ethnicities for what is unique to them based on their culture, the way they grew up, and how they view and function in the world. I could appreciate that, but maybe it's because as a Black woman, as a study of African American history and African history, my appreciation for our ability, for especially those who are descendants of enslaved people, for our ability to survive that kind of trauma. Now, this is the thing. In America, our freedoms and our rights, we're still fighting for many of them, but our freedom and our rights was only given to us, what, 50, 60 years ago? So technically, according to, whatever you want to say, the census or our place in the world, our social position, we have only been free for not many years. And I say free, I don't mean only just the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. I mean, even after the Jim Crow era and segregation, we have to look back to that, because that was, though we were walking around free, we were still afraid, mostly. I mean, we are still afraid. There are plenty of Black men who are still afraid. It's scary to be Black in America. And I do feel like, and I know Black men, I'm sure y'all gonna fight with me on this, Black women are further along in our healing from generational trauma than Black men are. That's just been my observation. We are just further along. I run into more Black men who are more afraid of what them being Black in America means and what it could do to them. And they allow those fears to stifle their progress more than Black women. I don't know why Black men are afraid of therapy. I don't know. Maybe because they feel like it makes them weak. Well, you know what? I think that's what it is, because Black people on a whole seem to be resistant to therapy. There are many things I think that contributes to that, like its availability, the quality of healthcare in America when it comes to Black people, and also the affordability. Therapy, psychological, mental health resources for mental health has kind of been looked at historically as a luxury. If you can't afford a shrink or a therapist, then you're not going to seek one out. But also, it has a stigma in the Black community. It has a stigma because we have been expected to power through for so long. And yeah, the expectations to power through are impressed on Black women more, because while we have every other race, we are the least desirable when it comes to marriage. While we have every other race impressing their beliefs on us and their expectations on us, we also have Black men doing the same thing. Black women, I think even our role in America throughout history, we were expected to maintain, even though we watched our men be killed and oppressed. So I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and it was during when Black Panther came out, Wakanda Forever. And he mentioned the fact that he did not like the storyline and how the Black men in the film were portrayed. It was very female empowering, but the Black men were backstabbers. They were, they needed, in his opinion, they needed the women's help too much. My point to him was that, so him saying that, he also decided Black men's role in America and how they have been impacted in America historically, specifically during the attempts of escaping slavery and, working towards our emancipation. Black men were being killed, and that is true. And you know what? Initially, I'm going to direct y'all to do your research. I'm going to put some links to some resources in the description. But initially, when slavers went to Africa, they were looking for men and essentially boys. Many of the Africans that were enslaved were black boys, black teenagers, because they were looking at them like cattle as a workforce, and they figured that these black boys were strong and they could do the work that they needed them to do. So the ratio of male to female, that in the first 100 years of them capturing Africans, kidnapping Africans and bringing them over to the Americas, the focus was on black boys. Then I guess someone had a eureka moment and realized that, hey, we should capture more black women, more African women, because guess what? They can produce black boys. And then that's when, things kind of changed and switched around. And then the focus was getting women and then just the people overall. So now, hundreds of years into the establishment of enslaved Africans, now there are descendants of stolen Africans who are now enslaved. And the seasoning process between the seasoning process and the attempt to put the chains on the people, on our ancestors, on my ancestors mentally was very intentional. Yeah, black men were being murdered. They were being murdered. They were used as mandingos. They were used as fighters. They were being bet on. They were chased. They were hunted. My point to my friend was that, but then that black man is dead and he's not suffering anymore. But then it's the black women that were left behind that had to continue to be raped and continue to try to protect their children and to continue the fight and trying to escape and maintain some kind of sanity throughout the situation. So, and then even once we were emancipated, just the rape and abuse alone, how we were looked at, sexualized, fetishized. We have just been put in a position where we have had to survive. We have had to survive in ways that I just don't believe black men really understand. And for me, as someone who has survived a form of slavery, because my father did deem me his sex slave, here in present day America, in Essex County, in East Orange, New Jersey, in Eatontown, New Jersey, in Passaic County, New Jersey, amidst people that was living their regular everyday lives, and the mental oppression and gaslighting and just psychological abuse that my father inflicted on me from a very young age into adulthood. To me, as I read and study more about the history of African Americans in America, of black people in America, I can relate. I can relate to the processes that slavers used to break down the psychological resilience of a person, because I experienced it. And when I see these stories and I read these stories and I watch these films and I have these conversations, I get very emotional because it brings me back to my own experiences. So I can empathize, I can sympathize with the struggles that black men and black people in America have to go through, not only because of myself as a black woman, but also, excuse me, y'all. See, it hits me. But also as someone who has had to work through a mental correction, a deprogramming, and essentially change and evolve from something that was inflicted on me. And we're talking about, when we talk about black men, we're talking about generations of attempts to make a change, attempts to get stronger, and being beaten down on a regular. And we see images, and we watch our brothers and our sons. I mean, I fear for my sons every day. I'm gonna have to pause. All right, y'all. So I had a moment, but I fear for my sons every day. And because, they're out in the world, they could get shot. They could be, all kinds of things. So yes, I love black men, but I do feel like black men need to do more work spiritually, mentally, and psychologically. I do. So that being said, I hope Black men, if you're watching this, please take my advice. My channel is not only for women. I enjoy sharing the dynamics of us as a people, not just based on gender or sex, but yes, culture, color, race, ethnicity, whatever you want to do it, you know, social standing, class, income level, because there is intersectionality with all of it. There is intersectionality with all of it. Now, being a Black woman, being a human, and knowing the potential that we have to overcome anyone that has been abused, that abuses, the abuse that they suffered is no excuse. Because for me, as someone who has suffered horrendous abuses, I have no intention or desire to hurt anyone else. In fact, I am hypersensitive of the feelings and the perspective of other humans. So I really wish that more people will tap into their ability to love and live outside of themselves and their own perspectives and experiences for a moment, to be empathetic to someone else's perspectives and experiences. This one, I'm like sweating down my back, y'all. I'm sweating, like tears are running down my got tears, everything. I'm Aziza Kibibi, and please sound off in the comments. Thank you to all of my supporters and my subscribers. I appreciate you. I love you. And, you know, at the very least, I have been criticized for talking about my experience publicly. But you know what it does? It gets a conversation going. It gets a conversation going. And I think that the first step is to start talking about the issue so that we could come together and find solutions. So on that note, thank you again for watching. Thank you for your time. Please like, share, and remember to subscribe. Be blessed where you are a blessing. Bye. Black women are the most educated in America. We are always on a mission to improve and better ourselves spiritually, mentally. The rates of Black women seeking therapy